That's an interesting one. Another great segue. So we've got a question from James Turner, and there are lots and lots of questions coming through from Skype. I think we're going to struggle to answer them all tonight, but we'll try and get through as many as we can. So James asks, once he's qualified as a computer games designer, and this chap's obviously on the designer course, can he expect to gain a lead design role if its concept document is accepted by the publisher? There's a couple of questions in there. So he's qualified. Can he expect to get a lead design role?
I think to look to get a lead design role is setting his ambitions a little high. I think it's very unlikely that a development studio or a publisher would take a graduate from Train2Game or from a university or from any course, to be honest, without the experience to back it up. You can prove that you have the ability with your portfolios and the work that you've done to date. You can certainly take your design on board, but the cost of developing a product, as I've said before, not to labour a point, is so high, the risk exposure is so high, the studios are definitely going to be looking for somebody with experience to lead that role. So it may be that you would be, if it was your idea, that you would be taken on board and you would help co-design that idea, but to lead the design team, I think is very, very unlikely.
We've got a question coming in live here from Edmund, and it relates to the question. How do you protect that idea? So Edmund's come up with an idea, he's pitching it to publishers. How does he protect it so that it can't be stolen? And that's it's a big issue within industry, and one that we've all suffered from for years. So who's going to answer that question? How does he protect his idea?
I mean, it's very difficult to protect just an idea, and IP protection law is a very complex subject. The best way, I think, to protect an idea, especially when you're showing around to different publishers, is to make sure that it's not just an idea. There's some physical assets that you can use, you can show. So we're talking about storyboards, character designs, level designs, and then you can put some of that information into escrow. And that's monitored by certain organisations.
It's very expensive to do, though, to put content into escrow.
It is. Unfortunately, IP protection is very expensive.
I think one of the things around that is when you say, how do I protect my idea? Well, what if your idea was, a few years ago, you're a contract driver who drives around, streets of San Francisco or something like that,
Yeah.
Where is an idea something that is quite unique and pivotal to a game, rather than just an idea for a game? And there are a few unique games around, that are completely different to others, but most others are quite derivative, and what makes it sell is the branding around it. So you could say, I've got an idea, it's about, I'm going to recreate some scenes in the Second World War or something, but that's not an idea. So I think what you are protecting is, as you said, your storyboards that are specific, or your characters that you're developing, and those kind of things you may get protection of. But even if you go into escrow, if it's just an idea, you're not going to get to that stage.
The number of cases, as you say, of games that are so unique, where you can have that sort of protection, it's very rare. Tetris, I guess, is one of them. Maybe The Sims. There's a few others, but really quite rare.
I mean, I do know of quite a few publishers, as yourself, Pete, including some of the ones that I've worked for, that refuse to accept ideas unsolicited for that very reason, because the ideas are, as I've said before, and I don't want to labour the point, but they're fairly worthless unless they've been worked up into a full pitch, but they could impact on a current development. And most big publishers, most big developers may have 30 or 40 ideas that they're kicking around. They prototype a few, they play with a few more, they take them to a storyboard, etc., etc. And as Carson said, I've got an idea for a football game. We're going to have lots of players. You can change their names, change their shirts. Well, EA are not going to look at that because they've got FIFA. But, mine's going to be better. Well, it's not. It's down to the implementation, it's down to the quality of the staff, the experience of the staff that take that idea and turn it into a fully interactive experience.
Segueing very well here. Richard Clark, you mentioned FIFA as a franchise. So Richard Clark's asking, will we ever move away from the modern age of sequel games with publishers like Ubisoft and EA owning the majority of the market and consistently launching sequels with very little sort of progression or change to those games, and really making the majority of their money and therefore controlling the market by what a lot of people feel are sequels, FIFA being a great example of that franchise.
It depends how you look at it. I don't believe that that is the way that the market is at the moment. It's exactly as Pete said earlier. We're entrenching down to what people want. People want that ever ready, that green sequel-based stuff. They want the FIFAs every year. They want the Call of Duties every year. They want the increase. But at the same time, you are also getting the new stuff coming through to the market. And it's just where that mixture is at the moment. At the moment, most of the market has seemed to go towards the big brands, but we are also getting the risk stuff coming through at the same time. That balance changes depending on how buoyant the market is. But you are not going to move away from the sequels because A, they're commercial properties, and B, it's what a large section of the market want.
I think that, you know, companies have spent a lot of time building up a brand. You know, so FIFA obviously was a brand a long time before, but if you look like Pro Evolution Soccer came out, and there were different evolutions in that development. You know, where at times FIFA would be better, and then Pro Evo was better, etc. And I think one of the things is when you've got that branding, it's important for a company that they keep that going, but also for a customer. There are so many games out now that you've got to be aware that, you know, we've seen a lot of mini and micro games involved in stuff. And honestly, sometimes you buy a new one. I bought one for my niece recently, and you think it's just the same as any other kind of thing. I've just spent 20, 30 quid. For what reason? Whereas with something like a brand, you know what you're getting. So there's not that kind of risk. And people will just buy it because it's the latest one. People buy that, you know, the new iPhone's coming out. People buy that just because it's the new iPhone. They've got the 3GS one, but they'll still buy this new one. So people do have that currency. And of course, talking about football teams bring out a new football strip every year. There's not some great new revolution in the material or anything. It's just people do that for a status symbol. And I think you're right. It's serving a need of both the industry to ensure that they just can work on the existing marketing and promotion that they've done, and it serves the need of the game players.
We're getting lots of questions on course-specific questions as well, so I'm going to jump in just to try and get through those because I don't want to scroll down and lose them, and some of them are very good. Adrian Blood is asking a question. He's enjoying his 3D artist course, his 3D art and animation course, and he says here enjoying every minute of it, which is really good. He asks though whether there's much demand in the role of art and animation within the UK, or whether a move abroad might serve him better. That's a question for you, Pete.
There is demand in England, and I think there always will be in England and the rest of the UK. There are a lot of jobs abroad. You know, big companies like Ubisoft and Electronic Arts in Canada and other places set up development studios that are very big, make very big games, and get, I know it's a common industry question these days, but they get tax breaks. And it's much cheaper for them to develop these games out there. And when you're talking about, you know, $50 million for the next Assassin's Creed game or whatever it might be, companies are looking for value. And at the moment, it's very difficult to get that sort of value in the UK. So, you know, there aren't big development teams owned by publishers in the UK. There are some in Europe. There are some, as I said, in Canada and America. But generally, the UK development scene is small independent studios. And it's a real shame because, you know, in the past, publishers have had very big development efforts in the UK, and there have been a lot of jobs available. But unless we sort ourselves out, it's not going to get any better.